Hey, what's going on? I'm Matt O'Leary back with another video, and today we're going to be talking about the possibility of trading one of the picks the Jets just acquired for a wide receiver. And before we get started, I just wanted to mention that you can follow me on social media at Matt O'Leary NY on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and maybe TikTok if that's still a thing. And also, please subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. You can call in, leave me your question. I'll try to get to it on the show. So one of the biggest flaws with the New York Jets offense is the lack of game-changing talent on the offensive side of the ball. Yes, Le'Veon Bell, if taking a step forward from his production last year, could definitely be that guy. Chris Herndon coming back could be that guy. Perryman, in small doses, was that guy last year. Crowder's is just a solid slot receiver, nothing wrong with that, and Mims is a rookie, so to expect him to come in right away and be a extremely productive offensive player at the wide receiver position, I think that's probably a little bit much. Obviously, what you want to do with the picks that you acquired from the trade with Jamal Adams going over to Seattle is try to make life as easy for your 23-year-old quarterback as humanly possible. Now, there's a couple things you could do. You could sit on those picks and use them in the first round of the draft and the third round, and so on and so forth, and rebuild through the draft. Or you could use one of the picks. I'm not saying trade all, but you could use one of the picks and trade for talent right now. And if you're operating under that mindset, here's two options that I think the Jets could use at the wide receiver position. First, let's talk about Allen Robinson for the Chicago Bears. He's on his last year of his contract. He's 27 years old, and he has not begun to talk with the Chicago Bears about an extension. So the likelihood of him re-signing isn't very high. Also, the Bears don't necessarily have a ton of picks. They gave up a bunch of assets to get Khalil Mack in a trade. Didn't necessarily work out. They might also need to get a quarterback in this upcoming draft, depending on what happens with Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles this year. So adding another first-round pick might be in their best interest, especially for a guy who isn't likely to come back. So last year, Allen Robinson had 1,147 yards and 7 touchdowns. That's really solid. And think about it, he was playing with a pretty bad Mitch Trubisky last year. He is one of the more underrated wide receivers in the NFL, and he would make life so easy for Sam Darnold, or a lot more easier to have that guy who is a bona fide stud on the outside and no doubt a number one receiver. The Jets are projected to have $58 million in cap space. They could make that even more money if they want to move on from Le'Veon Bell and Brian Winters and other guys like that. But as of now, $58 million. I would be for trading and then extending Allen Robinson. I think he would be a good fit for this team, and a nice combination of having Robinson, Mims, Crowder. That's a nice receiving core, not only this year, but in years going forward. And then Perryman could still be with this team as a fourth option. That would be phenomenal for the New York Jets in 2020. I'm all about it. The next guy I think the Jets could potentially trade for would be Juju Smith-Schuster. Similar situation in the final year of his contract. I don't necessarily think he is going to re-sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's 25 years old, and he actually played with Sam Darnold at USC. So if you want to get someone who he's played with and maybe a little bit comfortable with, Juju could be that guy. In 12 games last year, he had 552 yards and 3 touchdowns, which over a 16-game season is a pace of 736 yards. Keep in mind, he played a majority of that year without his quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger. He was playing with Rudolph. He was playing with Duck Hodges. Not exactly guys who are going to force you the ball and get you a ton of yardage. He's a year removed from a 1,400-yard season. That's what he could do when having a quarterback who can get him the ball. If you're just telling me, I don't even need 1,400 yards. If you're telling me he could put up 1,100, that would be phenomenal for the New York Jets. So, and I don't necessarily buy into people who are saying that he's not a number one receiver. He's really a number two. Well, he's a lot more talented than any other wide receiver on this Jets roster as of now. Maybe Mims becomes that guy down the line. Again, expecting that in year one's probably a little bit of a stretch. But Juju is also someone that I would look to trade a pick for and bring him in here and then look to extend him. He's a young player, and he's, again, a bona fide starting outside receiver, something that Perryman really isn't, and Mims hasn't been yet. So the Jets are going into the 2020 season with a couple of question marks for the outside receiver. Yes, you're hoping that Perryman is the receiver that he was in the final 5 weeks of the year last year. Yes, you're hoping that Mims is that guy, and I think he is, But expecting that kind of production, outside starting receiver production numbers from Mims in year one, might be a little bit of a tough ask for him. So I don't think it's really a bad idea if the New York Jets want to take one of those picks that they acquired from the Seattle Seahawks and flip it for a starting caliber wide receiver, and a really good one at that. The Buffalo Bills traded for a wide receiver in Diggs. They are trying to make life as easy for Josh Allen as possible. The New York Jets, in their first 2 years with Sam Darnold, haven't really done that all too well. They completely revamped the offensive line this year. That should help both Sam Darnold and Le'Veon Bell. And if you add another stud wide receiver in the mix, that could make, again, life super easy for Sam Darnold. And that's what this is all about at the end of the day. So let me know what you think in the comments down below or on social media. Thanks again for tuning in today. I'm Matt O'Leary, and I'll talk to you next time.